I'm going to be showing how to do some animation in Unity. First, I'm going to want to make my scene. So I'm going to make a plane here along with the cube. And what I'm going to want to do is animate the cube moving up and down. And that'll be kind of the introduction to animation in Unity. So here's the cube. And now from here, I can go into, let me close this so I can show how to navigate to it. Now I have a cube and a plane. If I'm going to be animating the cube, I could add an animation component to it and then make a clip from here. However, a lot of times what you want is an animator. And we'll get into the differences of that in a bit. Despite showing you that you can add in both components, what I'm going to do is a little bit different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Window, Animation, and open up my Animation tab. And then I'm going to dock it right by my console here. And here it says to begin animating the cube, create an animator and an animation clip. So when I click create, it's going to automatically make an animator attached to this game object, and then it's going to make an animation clip to use in my project. And I'll show you what that is. Cube, up and down. And right now it's in my scenes. I'm going to move it into a new folder in my assets just to keep things organized called animation. So I'm going to save this cube up and down. And here, as you can see, it adds in the controller and the animator. And we can see what this looks like. This is the animator controller. If I double click it, it's going to open up my animator. If you want to see that, you can go to animation and then click animator to dock the tab over here. And what happens is upon entry, it's going to enter into this state. And this state is my motion, my animation, which is up and down. And here it is. For now, we're not going to be worrying about the layers here in Animator because I want to show just the animation part right now. Here in the Animator, you're always going to need a controller. Here it references cube, so we have a controller. So we're good right now. Avatar is usually used for humanoids. For now, though, we're going to be using the cube. In animation, you can add in different properties. For now, I'm going to add in my transform property and in position. This is going to allow us to animate the transform position. If I press the record button, I can actually scrub in my timeline like this and move the cube slowly. I will make the apex around here. And then one of the principles of animation is ease in and ease out. So over here, I'm going to make it slowly fall until it falls drastically around here, until it eases back up. So pressing play, we can see what that looks like. It feels like going up is too slow. So here I can select things and press my delete button on my keyboard to delete it. If I wanted to make parts of the animation shorter, I can group select, box select, and then move this as such. And then if I want it to be tighter, I can use the arrow right here to move it inwards here. Like, trying to get it like so. So that's how you can move your keyframes around. Here we can press play. It looks a bit better. So that's how you can animate something. Now, let's say I want to change the shape of this cube when it reaches the top. Basically have what's called an animation squash and stretch. You don't have to just transform the positions. You can transform a lot of things. For example, I'm going to click record again, and maybe at the top, I'm going to change it from a cube to a sphere. Because I clicked record, it's going to record whatever I modify in my inspector as well. So if I click sphere here, it adds in the mesh type that I'm using and creates a keyframe for that. So as you can see, if I press play, it turns into from a cube to a circle or a sphere. I actually like it being a sphere better than a cube, so I'm just going to move this to the first keyframe. And just keep it as a sphere here. And now I'm going to do squashing and stretching, and this is basically modifying not the position but the scale. And squashing and stretching is essentially modifying the volume appearance of the shape to make it look like it's kind of squishing and pulling apart. And I will show what that looks like here. Here at the bottom, I'm not going to do much right here, but maybe when it reaches the apex, while it goes up, it's going to basically elongate. So I can modify the scale a bit right here. If it's elongating, the X is going to be getting smaller. And here I can also modify it a bit like this using the tools. Now that it's now thinner and smaller, you need to stretch it out, because with squash and stretch, the volume needs to remain consistent. And then once when it reaches the apex, it's going to retain that circular look to it. So I can go back to 1, 1, and 1. And then we can see what this looks like. It's going to look more dynamic, like it's moving up quickly to where its physical form is altered. And this is called stretch, where it stretches like this. Once it retains its shape and then goes back down, which I can copy over this keyframe by scrubbing to it, going to Control C, and then Control V, and then it's going to copy over that scaling there. Once when it's resting at the bottom here, it's going to do what's called squashing. So here it's going to go down and then outwards. So we can put this back at 1, 1 and then move it outwards even more. All right, there we go. Try to make the volume generally consistent again. I'll show you an example of non-consistent volume, but this is what it looks like now. It now looks a little bit happier as it goes up and down. So these are some animation principles and how you can use them. Here is what I guess looks like if you weren't to keep its volume and shape. This is like if I made it really, really, really squash, which exaggeration is fine in animation. It's part of the principles, but it looks almost like it's growing if you do this. And it doesn't look quite right. So maintaining the same amount of volume, for example, if you wanted it to be this exaggerated, make it thinner. And it looks a bit more realistic. So here, that's the example of the animation. Next, we can move on to basically using the animator. We have one animation here called cube up and down, but I'm going to make a new clip. I'm going to name it cube side to side. And here we have the cube again. I'm going to click animate, and I'm going to move it. I'm going to keep its original position here. So all I did was move it slightly and then click Control Z, which made an easy keyframe for me. Additionally, if you don't want to do that, you can basically add the property for the position here, as shown before. If you want, you can also make a keyframe by pressing this button, and that can also be how you create specific keyframes on the timeline. So here I'm going to be moving it this way. As it's still recording, it's going to save that motion. And then I'm going to make it go back to the center. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here. So it's going to go out, then back in really quick. It'll pause for a bit. So I'm going to paste in it being frozen. And then I'm going to move it out this way. Then I'm going to copy the center again, paste it, and this is what it looks like. This part is all the way over here. We could probably move that closer to make it more side to side. There we go. Now we have essentially two animations. And here in my animation tab, remember when I clicked basically over here and clicked add a new clip, it told me to save it somewhere. So I selected my animation folder and named it there. Now we have two animations. Clicking back on my animator, it also added the other animation here. If it didn't, let's say if it didn't add that in, all you can do is select it and drag it in. Now, when I press play, whatever cube the animator controller is pointing to on entry is what's going to play. So I'm going to press play and you can see that. So as you can see, it's being not a cube right now. In my animator, if I click on this and then right click set as the default state, now, sorry, not up and down, I meant side to side. Here we go, side to side. If I make this the default state, this is what it's going to look like when I press play. It's going to show the cube moving side to side, I guess, which here it looks front and back because the camera position, but you understand the idea. Basically what this is used for is things like running states. I'm now going to be showing how to use parameters in this, and it's a little bit more, it does involve a little bit of programming. So here I'm going to select parameters, I'm going to select one, and I'm going to make essentially a Boolean. And it's going to basically say direction. If the direction, I'm not going to name it that. I'm going to name it is up. So if it is up, you're going to be moving up and down. If it's not, you're going to be moving side to side. Note that this is parameters over here, not layers. The reason why we're making a parameter is because we need to tell the code, okay, when this variable is up, don't go side to side. Do up and down. And this is how we do that. We click on side to side. We click make a transition. So we're transitioning from side to side to up and down. We now select that arrow. We add in a condition. And the condition is we select our Boolean is up. And if is up is true, we then transition into cube up and down. And we do the same going backwards. Basically, when that condition is up is false, we now want to go back to moving side to side. As it is right now, we can dock the animator off to the side here. It doesn't look as good on this side, but it'll show the idea. I'm going to press play, and then instead of using code, I'm going to just manually do stuff. Right now, on entry, it's moving side to side, but when I select is up, it now transitions to moving the cube up and down. If I deselect it, so now the Boolean is false, it's going to move back to cube side to side. And that's how we can test our animation. Basically, this is called like an animation tree in Unity. And then in programming, you can then alter these variables as the player does certain things. The next thing I'd like to show is a different type of animation altogether. What we've been doing is animation clips, and it's a lot with transforms and scaling. Usually it's good for 3D things or smaller things. What I'm going to be showing next is pixel art animation. Right now I'm going to be making a pixel art. So here I can close out all of these tabs. So I can go to pixel art. Pixel art. I recommend this website a lot. I'm going to make something very simple. Something simple and probably not too great. Hold on here. It looks like it has my previous work. Okay. I'm going to start off with a shape that's going to then get larger and then disperse. So here it is. And it's down here where we can actually make the frames. I'm going to delete this one, and I'm going to copy this frame over. And when I copy it over, I'm going to make the shape bigger using the pencil tool and then the bucket tool to fill it in. While it gets bigger, I'm going to make the center get lighter. So almost like it's radiating out. Going to copy it again. Do the same thing again. I'm going to make this pixel size a bit bigger so it's faster. And then now it is a bit bigger. And then one last time, I'm going to make it large, but also like very thin, because it's like dispersing. There you go, and we can preview this. So that's what the particle, well, not, I'm not going to say particle effect. This is what the animation, sprite animation looks like. So if I go to File and I click Download, I can download it as a sprite sheet. So I downloaded it and I can put it in my folder like so. Now, I just dropped in a sprite sheet into my project, but Unity doesn't know that these are sprites. It doesn't know that it's multiple sprites, and it also doesn't know that it's pixel art. So we're going to change some settings here. One of the texture type is it's going to be a sprite. The sprite mode is going to be multiple because I need to cut up this sprite sheet. Now, to cut it up, I need to install the 2D sprite package. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let it install while this does its thing. So while this is installing, I'll just let it install. Great, so this is installed, and this is basically the sprite editor. I can click slice over here, and I can do it by cell count, and that's like how many of the sprites there are. You can also do it by the size and then automatic, but I'm just going to do it by the count. Then click apply. Now what this is going to do is it's going to turn, here, let's make this in a simpler view. It's going to turn the singular sprite into multiple. This slider, by the way, is just how you can view your work, how zoomed in you want. So this has now turned the sprite sheet into multiple sprites to use. Now, if I drag and drop this into here, it's going to make an animation. Sprite animation. And if I look at it, it looks bad. Like the resolution looks bad. That's because there's one other setting specifically for pixel art. Instead of bilinear, you do point no filter and click apply, and it looks so much better. It looks very crispy. So yeah, just make sure you got those settings, especially if you're doing pixel art. Now I dragged and dropped this into my scene, and when I did, it created an animator controller and an animation. And on this specific object that's in my scene, it has the animator with the controller, and we could double click on this to see, upon entry, it goes into my sprite animation. We can now see what this looks like. So I'm going to face this to the camera and press play. So that's how you can have your pixel animation. So yeah, that's pretty good content. There's only one other thing I wanted to show, which is, let's say you want something complicated like a human animation, and you just want to set dress your scene a bit with it. You can go to something called Mixamo. Yeah, there we go, Mixamo. And this is a place that has free animations that you can use. You can even import your model to apply animation to it if it has a rig that Mixamo can work with. So basically, I logged into Mixamo. It's free to make an account, and look at all these animations. There's so many, and all of them you could just download. They're free. I'm going to download an FBX binary. That's the default one. The frames per second. All of the default ones are good. I'm gonna download that. Additionally, you can modify things like the target height, and then it'll reload the animation. Hit intensity all the way up to the end. That's like how dramatic the animation is. How quick. How far the arms are going out. And then you can even trim it and then re-download it. You can also upload a character if you have a 3D character file, and if it has the rigging. You can also read the documentation here on how to make sure that the rigging is working. Yeah. So now that I downloaded this character, I can put it into my work. Here's the FBX. I'm going to click and drag it into here. And it's now animation from Mixamo by selecting it into my project. I'm going to select it to look in the inspector for the import settings. The rig should be changed from generic to humanoid because it's a human. And what it's going to do is understand the rig that's involved in this character. Since I click make a humanoid, it added a humanoid avatar to this object. Additionally, when I drag and drop it into the scene, after I've made it into a humanoid, it adds an animator to the parent object. The animator has an avatar reference, but it's missing a controller. You can make a controller by opening up the reaction, finding the animation, taking it and dragging it onto the character, like so. Now, it made an animator. I can rename it to character animator. And double click it to see what parameters it has. On entry, it goes right to the Mixamo animation. Obviously, these should be named better, but for now, we're just going to press play and see what it looks like. Uh-oh. Ah, I need to select the animator controller and put it there. There we go. Now we can see it. It's not looping, so we can basically see how we can get it to loop. If I open up this and select specifically the animation, it doesn't allow me to select loop time. I could click edit, but it'll take me to the import settings. And this is important. The import settings here allows you to loop. So I can click loop time, and that'll essentially loop this animation after I say yes. So now we have it looping. But let's say you really like this character and you want them to have different animations. Right now on the import, they're only really referencing the one animation. What we can do is we can get another from Mixamo. I can drag and drop like usual. And because this came with the animation that's already working with the rig, I can drag and drop it right here. I'll rename this one to sitting, just to make it clear. Like usual, I can add in a parameter, is sitting. And then my transitions. If sitting is false, I want you to be doing the reaction. If sitting is true, I want you to not. Additionally, we can see the preview of this. We can see what it looks like if you go from here to sitting. If you don't like the transition from here to here, we can actually change it to see how much weight is on each of them. If you want it to be instant, you could just put it to here. And then that's instant, as you can see right here. And then this would be sitting, and then going back to reacting. These animations don't really mesh well together, but this is just for the sake of example. Doesn't look like it really did it well. There you go. No, it doesn't look like it's doing it well. But we can see what it looks like when we press play. On the animator, I want to dock it to the side so I can mess with the isSitting parameter for my character. So it looks like it's not going from sitting here. Oh, Yes, it is. It just took a bit, I suppose. So I selected my character, and if I go back to not is sitting, it's going to then transition to here. Is sitting. And the reason why it's having that bit of delay is due to the transitions that I messed with. How long it takes to go from one animation to another. It gives a bit of delay. So that's how you can add multiple animations to a character like this. Next, I'm going to be showing some programming, basically. Yeah. Essentially in animations, you can sometimes have programming that occurs, and I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to make a new folder to start out with, because the project is getting a bit more complicated. I'm going to make a scripts folder. In here, I'm going to create a model behavior script. It's going to say turn on object. Now, what I want this script to do is basically when this cube goes down, I guess when the sphere goes down and hits the floor, I want to turn on this particle effect, kind of like it hit the ground and made like a dust smoke thing. So I want this script basically to be on this cube to reference. Let's see what the console's saying. That one is related to the animator. Sometimes Unity throws up these error references. When it's about anything related to graphs, it's usually about these types of graphs, the animator graphs. For now though, I am going to open up my script. Going to open up my script, and what I want is basically a public function that is going to be turning the particle effect off and on. As we haven't gone over the specifics of scripting, for now just follow along if you'd like. I will try to explain as I go, but until there's a formal lesson, this is the best we could do. Right now, I'm going to make a public game object. That is the object to turn on. And then I'm going to make a function that is turn on. Then if the object has a reference to it, I'm going to turn it on. What this is basically saying is because this is public, I can see this in my inspector. And I will show you what I mean by that. If I go back to the cube and I look in my script, I see the object to turn on and it's missing a reference. What I can do is I can physically take this sprite and that's the object I turn on. But here's the thing. If I made this not public but private, I don't see it in my inspector. It's going to be gone. As you can see, it's gone. And that doesn't really work out well because I need to reference this sprite somehow to turn it on. So I'm going to make it public. And it's a game object, and then it's the object to turn on. Basically, this is the name of the variable. This is the variable type. And then this is if you can see it in the inspector or not. Public void is the name of like the start of a function. The name of the function is turn on. It's public because I'm going to reference this in the animation of the cube. If the object isn't, if you actually dragged and dropped the object to turn on in the inspector, then I want you to turn it on. I also want a function to turn it off. So here we have another function, just like turn on, it's turn off. And it's going to take the object and set the activity to either true or false. Now, this dot set active, knowing that this is the right syntax, knowing that the right syntax for this, basically this function, is all related to Unity's language, which is C#. It's stuff that you had to take over the years to memorize. And then by memorizing it, you can write the code a bit better. But it's all essentially the same idea. It's just mixed together with other languages. Here, I now have my two functions, turn off and on, but these functions are never called anywhere. I'm going to now call it in my animation. So now that I have this cube selected, if I go to animation, when it comes to the ground, I want to do an event. So this is how I can do an event. We click this button, and right here, a symbol forms. And I can select a function. So to turn on object, I'm going to turn on the object. And we're going to make sure that there is a reference to the sprite that I want to turn on. Right now, in this world, I'm going to turn off this pixel. All right. Now that I turn it on, when I come back up, I'm going to turn it off. So right here. There we go. So now it turns on over here and then turns off. It doesn't show it in this timeline. You'll have to press play to test it out. Right now, it's going side to side. So what I can do is I can go to the animator and I can turn is up. And here, when it goes down, it shows that particle effect, and then it turns it off when it goes back up. Now, what this is useful is basically playing sounds. Every time the character might have an animation where their foot is reaching the ground, you can play an audio cue. Or if you want them to be sprinting and there's particle dust effects coming after their sprint, that's another way to do it. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it that I want to show for animation, and thank you for watching. One last thing that I wanted to show was essentially a project that I'm working on that utilizes a lot of animation. And we talked about parameters before, and there are quite a lot, but we only talked about booleans really. One of the other parameter types is something like speed, where it's an integer. Additionally, there's other ones that are triggers. When these triggers occur, instantly they go right into what you want them to do. So, for example, if I have the trigger here that says left leg block hold, left leg block hold. Essentially, when I press a button, instantly it triggers into blocking with my left leg. If we go into layers here, these have a base layer, which is essentially a lot of the movement. It's running, landing, idle legs, things like that. Here, sometimes we can add in conditions like speed, which can control, here we go. Speed, if it's greater than 0, I want you to basically go from idle crouching to move crouching. And this is what this looks like if we select into my scene with my characters. Here, if I go to scene, into the fight level, and select a player, basically. I can select here to here, and we can see what that looks like. That's going from idle to run, and then from run to idle. They stop moving. Now you'll also notice that I have something called layers, and this is basically me dividing up the upper body from the lower body. And I wanted to do that because in this game where you're supposed to be fighting, I wanted you to be able to jump and punch at the same time. So yeah, these are some parameters that I have for the game. These are some layers. These are what the layers look like, which is quite complicated. And then the game itself, this is how all those animations come together. And it's still a work in progress, but I just wanted to show an example of what it looks like. I can also dock my animator off to the side with the parameters going off, because that might be helpful to see as a visual. Just give Unity a second to load here. Scale's a bit off. Here we go. Animator dock to the side. And here I am selecting, I believe, player 1, which should be what I'm moving. Here we go. So as you can see, when I move around, it goes from idle to run, and then slows down back to idle. I can jump, and when I jump, what this is basically a trigger. If I look at my parameters, jump, it's either being used or not, or I suppose land is. It happens so quickly that sometimes the visual for the jump isn't even present because I go straight into jumping, into landing. Here I can go and crouch. And when I crouch, I go into crouch idle legs, and then I can move with the crouching as well. And those are general movements that happen. If I look at my upper body, I have some things happening too. My idle arms can turn into run arms. I can have jump arms. And then I can also jump and punch at the same time. And when I jump and punch, what it does is it goes to right into my any state and basically uses right punch because it's a parameter. As you can see, it's an instant trigger. And this is all hooked up to something called any state, meaning no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, if one of these triggers occur, I want you to do exactly that, where it points to. And those are just some examples of how you can make animation more complicated. I hope this kind of puts in perspective what it looks like in a larger project. Finally, I can show you a little bit of the code. The code is kind of complicated and all over the place. But there's one particular part that was organized to kind of just show animation. And I'm going to navigate to it. It should be player, animator. And here, we can see that I basically have public functions that tell the animator that's on the object that the script is on, which bool to get and what to set it to. So for example, if I want to be crouching, I'll set it to true in the script whenever this function's called. Whenever this function's called, I'll set crouching to false. Things like triggers is set trigger. And then things like movement is handled separately. So I'll take in a speed value into this method, and then I'll set the speed to that value, which is between, I think between 0 and 1. And that'll change the character's effect. So yeah, thank you for watching. And I hope that, gives a little bit more information.